Alrighty, my name is Ben Corkery. This is my show, Real Life Ed, and this is my carnivore story. So, I've been documenting some of this process along the way, and have lots more content that I never really published. But what I wanted to get out there was a brief synopsis of my experience on the carnivore diet, and then more specifically the lion diet, as it pertains to mental health, and in my case, depression, anxiety, mood instability, panic attacks, OCD, and all of that together. So that's what brought me to the carnivore diet, the anecdotal evidence surrounding its benefits, its reported benefits for these types of conditions, these types of symptoms from people like Jordan Peterson, Michaela Peterson, Brett Lloyd, Emily Penton, Tailored Keto Health. The list goes on and on. Jordan Fuller, people in the community who I have either spoken with or just followed their stories. And I am pretty far into the journey now, so I just want to put this out there for anyone else who is looking, who's unsure, or who's trying to just get more information. I know I needed so much information, so much reassurance. So, cutting right to the chase, does the lion diet or carnivore diet help depression? Can it cure it? The simple answer is yes. I've had some pretty profound experiences in making changes to my diet, but the most important one being the total shift to a carnivore diet, and more recently to the lion diet, which is the sort of beef, salt, water diet. And I'll talk about that a little more in a little bit. But long story short, this is not like a cut and dry thing, so I think that's the most important thing to put out there. Even when you hear someone's story, they often leave out, I think, a lot of the nuances, the figuring things out, the ups and the downs along the way. And that was frustrating for me, and sometimes it still is, because everyone's a little bit different, everyone's story is a little bit different, and this diet and this intervention is going to work differently for everybody. So with that being said, here's my story. Grew up an anxious kid, and always had kind of obsessive compulsive tendencies, which I believe are very personal. It's very tied into your temperament, how you deal with things, how deeply you care about things, how sensitive you are, how empathetic you are, how principled you are. And some of this is just in your person. It's your temperament, and that can definitely lead into kind of mental disorders, but on its own, it's not like a mental disorder. It's just who you are. So, little caveat there, I guess, is that some of these things were who I was, but as I developed, you kind of you hit life, you hit the circumstances, and you hit the imperfections of life. You hit the imperfections of your upbringing, of your parents, of your schooling, of your friends, of the people around you, of the scenarios that you end up in, and that's when you can start to develop these habits, pathways, responses, coping mechanisms that can lead into these mental disorders, depression, anxiety, these different manifestations. So all that is to say is, I definitely, looking back, noticed this when I was younger, and some of the ways that I dealt with things, some of the sort of irrational fears I had around things like just being left on my own or sleeping over. Like, I was afraid to, be on my own, go away on trips and things, and all this very deep irrational fear, things like that. Obsessive compulsive tendencies to try to protect my family, to try to make sure I was a good person, that I was, covering all the bases, that I was the one controlling the safety. Just these different tendencies that I can look back on, and then as I got older, I realized that this was kind of becoming a problem for me, because it was interfering with really my values. These things, these ways I was behaving and coping and feeling were starting to make my life smaller instead of bigger. And when we're trying to live the life we're called to live, we should be living bigger, not smaller. So I started to bump into some of these things as I got into college and university, and to start realizing that some of these things were a problem. For me, it manifested a lot in this sort of scrupulosity, manifestation of obsessive thinking and compulsionary things, which in kind of my religious context was a lot of kind of assuring myself that I was not sinning, that I had not done something wrong, kind of praying to make myself, to assure myself that I was good. And this is all kinds of, intrusive thoughts and trying to pray away intrusive thoughts, or trying to perform kind of these, good things like prayer and that kind of thing, but in sort of a distorted, toxic way, where you're kind of attacking yourself, you're at war with yourself, and you don't trust yourself. So anyways, that started to become apparent. There's a bit of a problem as I got into university, sort of navigating that just with life, with growing up, with living on my own. And but when the depression kind of really hit, when it really came in, was when I was about 18 in my first year away at school. I just remember it rolling in like a cloud. Before that, some of the anxiety comes and goes, and things like that, and it's not fun, but life still felt real. I still felt like I had kind of these real emotions, and I was alive, and I was kind of responding and reacting, even despite the obstacles. My first year university, a couple months in, I remember almost like a day, almost to the hour, where this wave just rolled in of sort of darkness, numbness. Numbness was probably the worst part about it. It was almost like, if something's bad but there's emotion in it, at least there's a certain richness in that. There's a certain richness in pain. There's a certain richness in loss. There's a certain richness in grieving and in being sad. But this was a numbness. It was like it rolled in with no context around it. It just came in and kind of flattened me out. And I just didn't seem to have any emotions anymore, honestly. That's kind of the way it came in for me. And up and down, that really progressed for the better part of 10 years. I'm 28 now, and I've attacked this from a lot of different angles, and this all brings me back to the carnivore diet, which has been the biggest mover, the biggest impact on my experience of depression, which was described. Now, formal diagnosis, I don't know if I can say it was formally diagnosed. My doctor basically told me I was depressed and tried to have me take medications, which I opted just not to do. And then a psychologist as well, classified it as dysthymia, which is sort of a moderate level, constant depression. That's how they categorize it. So I don't think I was kind of bipolar or anything like that. But even these diagnostic tools and these labels, they're interesting things, because your diagnosis will change if you're chasing a diagnosis. It'll get worse. It'll get better. They're just collections of symptoms, and then they're given a name. So anyways, I don't get hung up on that, and I'm not dismissing it at all. Like, these are legitimate issues. I'm just saying my kind of diagnosis, I guess, I probably could have kind of found an OCD depression diagnosis with a generalized anxiety disorder to top it off. But anyways, back to the interventions that I made. I've done lots of different things. I'm really big into holistic healing and to understanding the whole person. And what really started to set me free was when I really started to believe that it makes more sense if we're addressing this at all the different levels, mentally, spiritually, physically. When I started to realize how connected the brain and the gut were, and even the way we move, the way we interact in the world, our environments are speaking to us, our relationships, all these different things fit in. And it really kind of gave me the power to realize a medication's not going to fix me. It might help me or give me a little boost, but it's not really going to fix me. And at the end of the day, I need to figure out what's going on here, and I need to see what is kind of provoking this. Once again, there's temperament tendencies, but then there's also experiencing this darkness, this mood, this low mood, this doom, the kind of guilt, the darkness, the hopelessness, the not being able to see things clearly, not being able to see things in a hopeful way, not looking forward to the future with hope. So there's got to be a way to deal with these things. So as I started to delve into what could cause this and getting into some of these dietary changes, I heard more and more about carnivore, about even lifestyle. It started for me with keto, a friend, a story of a friend who really had a huge impact on their diet on their mood and her PTSD, and with a keto diet, and to the point of pretty much resolving these issues with a strict ketogenic diet. And I found that fascinating. I didn't dive into that for still a year or two. I liked my Ryan Cokes and my carbs too much, so I was like, silly. Health is like, that's silly. Diet, whatever. It's kind of like if you're depressed and someone says, well, go for a walk, or like be grateful for something. It's like, you just no, that doesn't work. So dismissed it for a while. Finally started to make some changes just for the experiment of it, because I was pretty much at the point in my life, I was like, I need to change something, and it's probably going to be like, I'm going to have to take a medication to change this, because like, I can't keep going like this. I'm not getting anywhere. I'm just bogged down. I'm depressed. I can't get any traction. And I was like, okay, you know what? I should try this keto thing, because like, at least that's something I can do before getting into the medications. And looking back, I'm really glad I did not, because there's a whole other can of fish. And I just feel blessed to not have had that piece of the puzzle, because it's a tough piece of the puzzle to navigate into and out of. But anyways, started probably, this is like 4 years ago now, maybe 3 years ago, getting into keto. And I remember about 5 days into keto, this is like, I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't understand anything. I barely knew what carbs and like macronutrients were when I started out. But I started to have a little more energy and a life in me. On like the 5th day, I remember waking up on my kind of trial, and I was using Diet Doctor. I was following their instructions, and great resource if you want to get into this, if you don't know where to start. They also had some awesome testimonies about keto diet for like anxiety and mental health. But my friend recommended this. They got recipes, they got resources, they got how to get started. So I was kind of following along, and 5 days in, I'm like, I honestly feel like just a little more alive. That switch to ketosis, to having the brain being running on fat instead of sugar, it was just enough of a lift that I was like, there's like a lightness. I went out for a morning walk, and I thought, there's a lightness in me that is different, and it's not like the lightness from like reading an uplifting book, or like having like a therapist reassure you that things are okay. It was like, I actually feel better. Like my body like feels better. I feel a little bit more alive. It's just a little taste that sent me on this huge experimentation for the next, until now, like 4 years of keto and paleo and trying different things. And for a long time, I kind of went in and out of it. I saw some success, but never really like, well, I shouldn't say game-changing. It was game-changing. It was enough of a tool that I kept sticking with it, kept coming back to it, because I just felt not as crappy, not as dark, not as like totally down and out when I was doing keto and that kind of thing. But I would go off for a few days or a week or Christmas, or drinking, all these different things, but stuck with it. Started to discover carnivore and to hear even more stories around carnivore and mental health, as I mentioned, and started to think, I gotta try this. What are the downsides? Did a trial and really only felt better. It was interesting to adjust to, but started to be like, I think I feel even better. And at some points there was almost like it was a really weird mix between like dreams I would have, or just little moments where like there would be a break in the clouds of the doom and the depression, and like a little bit of light would come in like an undeniable way. Like you couldn't argue with it that, whoa, the depression just broke for a little bit there, but then it would kind of come back. So I started to have those moments when I started doing carnivore about 2.5 years ago, and then I couldn't keep it consistent. I would be like, was that real? Was that not? I don't know. But once again, I was intrigued enough. It was enough that I was like, do not forget that. Come back to that and try it again. Delve into it. How can you optimize it? So then I went through that cycle with carnivore for like 2 years, and I'd be on it for like 8 weeks, pretty strict, and I would honestly only do better and better as I was on it. But then I'd be like, party, drinking, get hungover, eat something shitty, or whatever it is, and couldn't establish like I couldn't keep all my progress. I couldn't keep going, so I kept feeling like there's more. Finally decided to really kind of commit to this, trying to make some decisions in my life, and I was like, I need to be in a good spot. I need to take responsibility for my life, and I need to really start sorting these things out. So I started to reach out for some help, to work with a couple different coaches in the carnivore and keto community, some awesome people, to figure out the mechanisms of the fat and what little foods do cause problems, how strict do I need to be, what is the cost of deviating, what things are a big deal, what things are not really a big deal, just getting more and more info and really working that. And so that started for me in last November, and we're now in August. And I started a fairly strict keto and carnivore regime. At first I was allowing more things like cacao butter and some protein powder and just things like here and there, some spices and allowing for that, but cut out most of my drinking. Bit of a fall off around Christmas and New Year's for like a week. Totally fell off. And then got back on and even cut out the booze. And then in like March got like super strict. I was like, I need to just go all in on this. Go super strict with carnivore. Literally only carnivore. I cut out my coffee. Cut out dairy. And started experimenting and started feeling good. Coffee was a tough one because when I cut that out, I felt like I dropped back. But anyways, all this is to say, getting more serious about this and starting to see, for the most part, like slow improvements with the mood, almost like up and then down and then back up and down, but enough to be like, I'm doing better when I'm doing this. Skip to May, so 3 months later, and I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm not going as fast as I want to. I'm not like I was feeling pretty good. Like, and when you compare this to being like down and out with like panic attacks and like doom depression, like carnivore got me to a place where I was like not afraid to get out of bed in the morning, had some energy to get up and do things I wanted to do, like coping pretty well. So like I'm talking like pretty good. Like you get energy, you just start to feel a little more optimistic. You start to just be a little bit more alive. So like that's a huge improvement there. But I'm talking about like what is like actually thriving. That's what I was chasing. So I was thriving. So maybe sometimes I even didn't notice as much the little changes that started to happen. And so because I was chasing, like I know there's more. I've sensed those little breaks in the depression, those real breaks, and I'm like, that's what I'm going after. So that brought me to the Lion Diet, strict carnivore, in May, beginning of May. And 3 weeks into the beginning of May, I was trying to prioritize fat. I was eating fatty, short ribs, and I was trying to eat more. I was trying to not let myself get hungry, because that was one thing I realized, I think, inconsistency in. I'd be hungry, then I'd eat, and then like have a day with not as much fat, and I don't think I was getting consistent enough. 3 weeks in, but 3 weeks into Lion Diet, I started feeling good, really good, and for longer periods. Like the depression would just be gone for like a few hours, and I'd be like, this is weird, this is happening, this is like actually lifted, and this is crazy. This feels like amazing, like I'm almost just happy. Like, what is this? What is it to feel happy? Like, it's just this, experiencing it is bizarre and amazing. And it was weird because it would be, sometimes when I was going to bed, I'm just lying there like, I'm happy. What is this? Like, I'm actually just happy, not because of something, but just because like I'm alive and there's life and it's awesome. And it was like, this is like, it's working. It's actually working. And it was crazy. But then it would fall off again. So that'd be a few days, few nights, fall off. Wasn't really sure why. And then it would kind of come back for a day, and then it would fall off again. And it was like frustrating. It was really frustrating. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about the stories are not straight lines, and they're not like some people say, oh, it just happened in a day and I've been amazing ever since. That was not my case. That was not the story for me, and I'm still on the journey. But like, these things did start to happen, and I was like, this is undeniable. It is working. And even with all the ups and downs, slowly underneath, I also felt like there was a deeper level of just slow, consistent improvement. And that's kind of continued to happen. Not as extreme as that, about that month, I would say. There was some different days, and specifically some different feelings that just happened where I felt like I was kind of coming alive again and just regaining my whole person. Like, I knew before that some of me was like asleep, not alive, and not thriving, and that started to come alive, just in real kind of bright emotional ways, almost like colors coming back. Colors coming back is a great way of putting it, and I've heard other people say that too. But anyways, it wasn't without its frustrations, because then for a couple weeks I would feel like I'm pretty good, but like I want that like high again. Or was that normal? What is normal? You know, that's like a tough thing if you've been depressed for like 10 years, or you're like, what is even normal supposed to be like? But continuing to optimize and to stay on it with that high fat lion diet seemed to really be the right ticket for me. With that being said, I am now, this is August, so I'm almost 4 months, May, June, July, August, I'm almost 4 months lion diet, and things have continued to get better. I would say it's more of like an even keeled thing now, so I feel like pretty good. Sometimes I get those like happiness moments, but overall I'm just better and doing pretty well. And you can look at that just by what's happening in your life. One thing I've like just gained more confidence in the things that I want to do career-wise, and I mean started writing, and just things like are sort of happening more that like I would just be more afraid to do and would not have the confidence to do otherwise. And slowly just like possibilities opening up, like just trusting myself more, having more of a calm confidence. It's almost hard to explain, but it's kind of like this. It's a bigger transformation than you think, but it also takes more than you think, and it takes more time. So one thing I can say is that I'm doing the best that I've done in 10 years. I started to feel happy again and excited again about things in a way that I thought was dead and gone. And one thing I want to just throw in here, it's kind of like, I don't know, to put it in context, is like, I had like a crush on a girl back when I was 18, and when this kind of depression rolled in, those feelings just like dried up in a way that wasn't like I don't like you anymore. It was like I don't have feelings of like excitement anymore about that, about like romance even, which sounds weird, but like I remember watching movies and like not being able to relate to like the romance in them, and it was like there was just a numbness in my heart around those things. And I'm a very I don't know if romantic's the word, but I'm a very deep person, and I love that richness, and I love I do feel very deeply, so it felt wrong, and it felt sad and empty that it's like I couldn't relate to those things anymore. Anyways, that was a tough thing, like, and that really persisted for years and years. And dating people in my earlier 20s was tough because I didn't really feel anything deeply. It was just like surface stuff. But what do you do? Like when you're in that, I don't know, you just make the most of it. Like that's your life. So anyways, that all this to say is like in the past like 4 or 5 months, those things have started to change, and I've started to just have feelings of excitement again, and of the possibility of new opportunities in life, whether that be like romantic or whatever. But just hopefully that example helps of just being excited, kind of caring again, and not being apathetic. It comes down to being actually moved. Like, are you actually moved in your full person and in your emotions to feel alive and to act with your own agency? And a lot of stuff is kind of like disciplinary or whatever, but hopefully this is making sense. You should actually be moved by what you feel. Our feelings are very important, and when that switch is off, it's very hard to know what to do, to know who you like, what you want out of life, who you are. But when that comes back on, you start to know who you are again, and you start to know what you want again, and you start to be able to trust that, and it just seems easier to make decisions again because you have feelings that are informing those decisions. It's not just like this cold, rational, like that was before. It was always, for me, it was like, I have no connection to any of this, so it's going to be a sort of weird transactional decision about a school program or a class or a job or a holiday plan, or it was tough even with friends. Even though I loved them, it would be like, I'm just going to do this because we're friends and this is what friends do, but like I don't know what I actually want to do or bring to this conversation relationship. Anyways, hopefully that makes sense and gives you some context. That stuff started to come back, and I think I'm still early in that process, and it's been very rich and exciting, and it's an exciting journey to be on. And when I look at where I was, this is a huge difference. So if we're gonna, if I was at like a 3 out of 10 for a number of years, now I'm like a 7 averaging at a 7, but like 7.5, 8, little glimpses of 9s, like who knows. But it feels like that's getting better, and the biggest factor here has been the carnivore diet, and more specifically the lion diet. That was a big improvement. I would say, like, if we're at 50% improvement, so 20% improvement with keto, and then 50% improvement with carnivore, and then it's like 80% improvement with like lion diet, being strict. So I was totally strict from May 4th unto August 24th, 120 days, dead strict. Some pepper snuck in there. That was literally like the only thing. Some pepper on some brisket, which I kind of felt. I feel like the oxalates in my hands when they tense up, and a little just cloudy and foggy. But like I'm talking strict. Even cut out the flavored sparkling water for the last 3 weeks of that to test it, and that seemed to like make a difference. With that being said, I just felt like it was time to experiment a little more. So I've experimented with a little bit of coffee here and there, which honestly didn't sit very well. It just kind of made me kind of anxious, and I don't know. A few supplements, like with some caffeine in them, which I'm kind of playing with. Some kratom, which I'm going to do another video on because it's great for, I finally figured out kind of how to use it, but kratom is can be great for anxiety, can be great replacement for coffee, can be great for kind of just feeling better. So really like that topic, and super excited about that stuff. So do another video on that. But very recently, I've been making pemmican, and so I started bringing in some. I put a little bit of cocoa and a little bit of stevia in the pemmican to just try to make it taste better because it tastes so weird, and seemed to be okay with that. So then I'm like, all right, I don't know, maybe my gut is healing. I'm still very cautious. I started just last night for the first time. I had some Equip protein powder, which is a beef isolate protein powder with only a couple ingredients. It does have natural flavors, but I mean it was the citric acid that like Michaela Peterson was talking about that she reacted to, that's in those like electrolytes that I was worried about. But I had a little bit of that last night. I seemed to be okay, seemed to be doing fine. So I'm going to very carefully play around with a few things. I avoided those stevia, like electrolyte drinks like the Relight and the LMNT, just because people seem to be saying that could cause problems if you're having a lot of it. So I didn't. I recommend trying get really strict and just friggin' fill up on meat and meat you like. But so playing around a little bit now, but still seem to be doing good and trending in the right direction. And for the most part, the depression, like, sometimes it like jumps back in and you're like, I'm back where I was, but then like it won't stick around. And so like for a little bit you'll be like, oh, nothing has changed, nothing's working, like I've done all this and like there's no difference. But it's weird because like then you'll come out of that and you'll be like, oh yeah, for the most part like things are pretty good now, and I'm not in that spot very often. But those are the insidious weird mind games around mental illness and healing from mental illness. But it's definitely happening. It's really exciting. Quickly, what was I eating? What do I eat? Love short ribs. The price got jacked up on them, so anyways, I got to mix it up. But I was focusing on like short ribs, ribeye when it was on sale, I don't really like burgers. Don't do a ton of ground beef. I just don't find it very satisfying or like easy to eat. Roasts that I can cut into steaks, barbecue it to make it taste better, or air fry it. Like I air fry a lot. And then more recently, I was like, I want the fat. So a month ago, I started supplementing with raw suet, which is not for the faint of heart, and it takes time to get used to. But that has been a great way to get more fat in, which I think is pretty key for me. So I chop it up and frozen. Make sure you get not suet, get the fat trimmings. Suet is like dry and crumbly. Fat trimmings are like the fudgy, buttery fat that is more chewy, just way easier to eat. So I chop that up, freeze it, then I chop it up into little pieces and eat it with like a nice grilled steak or short rib or something. And it actually is kind of nice. It's kind of creamy and cold. You can't really taste it. And then I just mask it with the taste of the steak, and that ups my fat. It's perfectly for it's awesome for digestion, because it's not rendered down or anything like that. I don't recommend trying to get a lot of rendered fat. It'll just mess up your digestion. So it's like I just supplement that, and you can weigh it out if you want on a little scale. Just get a little chunk, maybe like that big, and that'll really make sure your fat's up there. So I do that. San Pellegrino sparkling water. Just drink the plain stuff for now, pretty much. Because I was crushing a ton of those flavored bubblies, and I think they might have been just tweaking the mood a little bit. So good thing to experiment. Eat about twice a day. I used to try to avoid breakfast. Now I just eat when I'm hungry. I usually eat earlier, and then I'll eat later as well. So 2 to 3 meals a day. And yeah, it's been good. Short ribs, lamb. I've been getting more into lamb and want to get more into lamb. So I think I found a farmer I can get lamb from, because I mix some lamb in, and lamb seems to do really well for me. So I love lamb too. So wanting to get into that. But that's basically what I eat. Long story short, trending in the right direction. Give it a try. Like, start out with carnivore. Don't make it too hard on yourself. Keep coffee in or whatever at the start. But you got to try this. This is my kind of story, and it's still early on. Hopefully this can help or relate to someone. Please reach out if you have questions. Like I said, I am not one of those like night and day stories where it was like, it made everything go away. It's like, no, but sort of yes, because I'm doing like so much better now. And I seem to continually be doing better. So that's pretty much it, guys. One thing I'll throw in, and that I've been kind of confused and interested about, is like, how much can the diet fix versus like lifestyle? So more recently, some things that I was stuck on, I'm realizing are also me like just needing to be more aligned with who I am and doing meaningful work and tasks and spending my time around things that light me up. That can also have an impact on mood, but that's kind of secondary. So maybe another video on that, because I find the obsessive stuff is tied to that. So in terms of the OCD, the power of it kind of went away, but when I still really care about something, I know it can kind of come back, kind of attack that. If you've experienced it, you might know what I mean. Like, you'll start to obsess over something, and that can be a signal that you're really grasping on tightly. So that is still there sometimes for me, but it's also, the hold is not as great. It's not like it has all the power over me, and that'll be interesting to see how that continues to develop. But this is holistic. Remember, this is the big punch. This diet, this is how we send information to our body, how we fuel our body. But there's going to be other things as well. And on that line, like, meditation was huge for me for getting out of the panic attacks and stuff. Although I think a strict dietary intervention will basically get rid of panic attacks, or at least minimize them to the point where you can do the mindset work to face them and not be afraid of them. But anyways, I have some other stuff on panic attacks and that kind of thing. One other final comment is booze. I cut out booze for 5 months because I did not want to be hungover or mess myself up or sabotage myself. I recently had a really good friend got married. A couple good friends were visiting. I've had a couple whiskey and rye and sodas, whiskey and soda, club soda, plain club soda, and I've done perfectly fine with that. And I've actually had even a decent buzz like the one time. So I'm kind of like cautious of it because I don't really like what alcohol does to me, and I can just get, I don't know. I don't kind of like who I become sometimes, but also nice to be able to have a couple drinks, a little bit of a buzz, celebrate, and then not be hungover or whatever. So don't overdo it, but don't worry about a couple of that. Definitely recommend cutting it out at first. Guys, give this a try. Let me know what you think. Hope this reaches some people, and talk to you soon.